have demonstrated another passionate failure of machinations by our detractors on social media to reverse and stabilize community, peace, security, and development milestones our party fought. I applaud the people of Zimbabwe and leadership of the party for remaining resolute in defiance of the opposition's regime change agenda and the warring levels of self-hate through a sustained call to make our country Zimbabwe ungovernable, saying there was a crisis in Zimbabwe. The crisis exists in their minds. It exists in their countries. The crisis exists in their bedrooms. We have challenges like any other country in the region has challenges, and we are resolved to face these challenges head on. We will not seek outside mediation to deal with challenges which they themselves have.
President, as we speak today, is much important.
Yes.
The MDC agreement is very clear. And who is the head of the MDC alliance? At Arnold Place, our Triangular is the head of the MDC alliance. If you end up by election with the Vika,
Yes.
county seven.
Oh, yes.
Kundorola usikula tukabvisa pama-councils napama-MP tukabvisa vanhu ve-MDC alliance saka tatidhava zvechii hatati kunzwa zvakare muchiti MDC alliance lomwe munhu asirimi never say that, never say no way, never say no identity. Morgan Shankar will be angry. We are the MDC alliance.
Welcome to The Situation right now on Heart and Soul TV and radio. Today we are joined by the former Finance Minister Zimbabwe and the Vice President of the MDC Alliance, Tendai Biti, to discuss the issues around Zimbabwe's economy and its political future. Welcome, Advocate Biti, and thank you very much for joining us in this program.
Thank you, Blessed.
Today, it's been 2 years since President Emmerson Mnangagwa became president of this country. What is the general overview of the performance of the economy and the lives of the people of Zimbabwe?
Well, I think that President Mnangagwa, or Mr. Mnangagwa, has been an absolute disaster. He has taken this country to depths of new laws that are unprecedented on multiple fronts, on the political front, on the human rights front,
on the humanitarian front, on the economic front, on the general stability and status of our country. The country is literally and metaphorically gone to the dogs. The basic issue, Comrade Blessed, is that you cannot run a country, you cannot run an economy without the existence of a social contract, without consensus, without the voluntary surrender of those that are being governed to the person who is governing them. So we have a crisis in this country of legitimacy. We have a crisis in Zimbabwe of a broken down social contract. And the economy now is the biggest reflector. It becomes an X-ray to the crisis of legitimacy. It becomes a symptom to the crisis of legitimacy. It becomes a mirror in respect of which it reflects the absence of that voluntary surrender of authority, the absence of a status quo where there is reciprocal obligations between citizens. So when you live in a country where the social contract is there, there is respect. We as citizens will pay our taxes happily. We obey the laws of the country happily because we trust in that government. Where we don't have that trust, we will not pay taxes. We will not obey the law. We will exist outside the state. 95% of our people are existing outside the state right now. If you go to 4th Street, there are thousands of Zimbabweans making a living out of trading in the parallel exchange rate. If you go to 4th Street to Roodput, you will see every day hundreds of buses coming from South Africa, hundreds of trucks called Malaichas carrying goods imported at millions and millions of US dollars by people who are now existing outside the state. The state no longer has any control of them because there is no social contract. But I want to come specifically to the economy. There is this charade that they are maintaining that the exchange rate has stabilized. The exchange rate is a function of supply and demand. Ultimately, at the end of the day, your exchange rate is a function of your imports and of your exports. It's a relationship between your imports and your exports. Ultimately, too, at the end of the day, your exchange rate is a barometer, a yardstick of the political confidence existing in this country. Now, our imports per year exceed 5 billion, 6 billion US dollars. In other words, the things that we need to import to bring into the country. So you take fuel, we require about 1.5 billion US dollars worth of fuel. With the massive 18-hour power shortages that are existing from June of last year to now, our fuel bill would have doubled to 2.53 billion US dollars as people buy petrol and diesel for their generators. We require in almost 1.5 billion to import electricity, which we purchase from Cabora Bassa HPC in Mozambique or from Eskom in South Africa. Then we import food, we import chemicals, we import heavy machinery, and so forth. So 5 billion, 6 billion. They are running an auction, but this auction is artificial. It's a rigged auction. It's rigged in the sense that it's not an open market. Number one, there is only one person who is supplying the foreign currency, and that's the Reserve Bank. In an open market like your tobacco auction floor, for instance, there is an open market for the supply side, and there's an open market for the demand side. So using my example of tobacco, there are over 100,000 tobacco farmers in this country. There's not one supplier. There's not one tobacco farm. So these farmers come from all over the country, from Karoi to Rusape. Then the buyers also come from all over the world. Now, this market is rigged in that one, there is largely one supplier. That's the Reserve Bank, which has been putting about 50 million US dollars every week. Then, even though they're not telling you the recipients of that money, I can assure you that if there were to be full disclosure of the actual applicants and the purchasers of that foreign currency, you'll find more or less the same characters. One of them being a secunda. So it's a rigged auction floor. But
let us discuss step by step so that our viewers can actually understand where you're coming from. So the government has declared a lot of surplus in their budgeting, and they have said that they are regaining the control of the fiscal and monetary instruments to be able to drive this economy. And this is the result that you've seen in the controlling of the foreign exchange rate.
You're mixing two things. You're mixing monetary policy and fiscal policy. Let's start with the fiscal question. There is a myth that they want to portray that they have a budget surplus. In the midterm statement presented on the 16th of July 2020, the Minister of Finance claimed that he had, in the first half of the year, 800 million Zimbabwean dollars, which effectively is in fact $8 million US, which is in fact nothing. $8 million can't buy you anything. The thing is, you cannot hide the fiscal deficit by actually not delivering, by actually not making the budget perform. So as I'm talking to you right now, nurses have been on strike for 3 months. There are no drugs in hospitals. There are no doctors in hospitals. So money is not being spent. So you can't say I've got a surplus when you are not spending that money. As I'm talking to you right now, urban authorities don't have chemicals for water, purification. As I'm talking to you right now, the government has hardly paid any person in terms of social safety nets for families that are not working, families that need safety nets for COVID protection. So, in other words, the government is not spending money, it's not doing what it is supposed to do in terms of housing, in terms of electricity, in terms of shelter, in terms of basic utilities to the people of Zimbabwe. So it's an artificial surplus.
But it's providing transport. ZUPCO is paying subsidies for meal, and it's also has introduced $75 for civil servants.
We went to court. Human rights activists went to court and said to the government of Zimbabwe, if you claim you are giving money for meal, if you claim you are giving some people, some households money, have a statutory instrument which outlines the law and makes the process transparent, not an opaque process where if you are a ZANU-PF minister, as Mutulisi has been doing, you go to Bing and you give 40 people and then you claim I'm feeding people. The process is not accountable. The process is not answerable to Parliament. The issue of ZUPCO, as I'm talking to you right now, there are people that are walking from Chitungwiza to Harare because there's absolutely no transport. There is a total breakdown of the public transport system because of the monopoly that they've given to ZUPCO. And why give the monopoly to ZUPCO when all along we've always had the private sector, the owners of combi drivers, the traditional bus owners in Zimbabwe, the muchachas of this world, the Toombs Motors of this world, the Bafana Motors of this world, if you come from the southern part of this world, the Dubs, Mangekheni buses of this world, you know them better than I do. Why are you displacing those people? So the claims that they've monetized COVID is a fiction. They are hardly doing any testing. That's why the curve is refusing to be flattened. This is a fiction. You recall that 3 months ago, they launched an $18 billion support program for COVID, but they've hardly spent anything on COVID. And that is the point I'm making, that you cannot claim an artificial surplus which you are hiding by underperformance, by not delivering, by not performing.
Let's talk about the monetary aspect of controlling that space where they're printing money in the fiscal, where they're now printing money. They say now they have control, and this will change the way we do business. And in fact, it is showing in the balance of the foreign currency.
Look, there are 3 things there. First, the current account. The current account is an account which reflects the difference between your exports and your imports. And since July of last year, they've been claiming a positive balance in the current account. But when you embark on what is called import suppression, when you stop people actually spending their money, you can't say, I've got a surplus. It comes back to their arguments on the fiscal balance. You can't say, I've got a surplus when people are not spending money. But the truth of the matter is that the country is flooded with grey imports. The country is flooded with grey imports. What are grey imports? These are goods that flood into the country, coming through unofficial sources and not accounted for. I've given you one example. Look at the tons and tons of goods that are brought by the Malaikas from South Africa, which do not pay any duty, which are hidden. That's millions and millions and millions of dollars, which are not being accounted for in the current account. If you were to account for grey imports, your current account, your imports would be around $6 billion, $7 billion against export earnings of $4 billion. The truth of the matter is that for every dollar that comes into Zimbabwe in the form of export earnings, $4 are going out in the form of imports. And consider your life as an average Zimbabwean. Consider your life. You wake up, you need transport. Transport, you need diesel or petrol. That's not made in Zimbabwe. If you go to Pick and Pay supermarket, if you go to OK Mart in Hillside, if you go to any Spar shop, 60 to 80% of the goods that are in there are imported. They even import bananas. They even import apples. That's a current account. And much of those goods are being brought by runners. They are grey imports. A third aspect is the money that the diaspora is sending to Zimbabwe. The diaspora is no longer sending money. The diaspora is sending goods. So there are people with online platforms where you can buy, if you're in London or South Africa, you can buy your grandmother in Lutito or Cholocho goods that will be delivered to the door of your mother in Budiriro, in Kwazana, in Makokoa, in Pelanda. So that's again a great import. Economics is very simple, blessed. The current account is a function of productivity. Are you producing? We are not producing in this country. If you go to Bulawayo, huge factories have been turned into churches. If you go to Grenada in Harare, huge factories are now overridden by grass. Without productivity, it also means that we can't export, because you can only export that which you are exporting. If you look at our export right now, it's the mining sector, which has no value addition here. It's the mining sector and tobacco. So the rest of everything which we are using here, we can't even make bicycles, we can't even make a teaspoon, we are importing. And so
going back to
and so when we import now, it means that more money is flowing out of Zimbabwe than is coming in.
Yeah, but going back to your argument, you said it's
So anyone who then claims that there's a current account a surplus, you either drunk or you are out of mind, and in the case of Mutuli, you are both.
Going to your argument, you said that there's no consensus between those who are governing and those who are governed. But you also then point to the issue that the problem is productivity. So how do those link?
They link because, you see, three things. The first one is that the government of the day, which is a leadership issue, must execute policies that actually ensure that there is productivity, that actually ensure that there is an inclusive economy that is existing in the country. Now, one of the things that has killed industry in this country is the mismanagement of monetary policy. The biggest disaster that Emerson did was the de-dollarization of the US dollar and the regime of multiple currencies, starting with in February 2019 through SI 33 of 2020, and then later on in June of 2019 through Statutory Instrument 142 of 2020, and then subsequently through the Finance Act number 2 of 2020, passed by Parliament on the 1st of August 2019. You cannot de-dollarize, as they try to do, for three basic reasons. Number one, it's your currency at the end of the day is a reflection of confidence. When people don't have confidence in the currency, it doesn't matter what you do. And in the case of Zimbabweans remember so vividly how they were abused by their own currency in 2006, 2007, 2008. Their own dollar became a vicious instrument of arbitrage, a vicious instrument of depauperization. People were made poor by the Zimbabwean dollar. Inflation, the savings. My own father won a huge claim against the Minister of State Security for $4 billion. He was involved, he was damaged in a road traffic accident. But that money was wiped away by hyperinflation. So if you speak to my family and speak about the Zimbabwean dollar, we remember our father's money that we lost in the bank. By the time that this government was through with us in 2008, they were printing $100,000 trillion note that couldn't buy you 2 bottles of soda. So the Zimbabwean dollar was caught in flagranto by the people of Zimbabwe. It was caught with its pants down. So there is no Zimbabwean ever abused by the Zimbabwean dollar in 2006 to 2008 who will ever believe in it.
But is it not for their own benefit?
Number two, it's not. It's not. Money at the end of the day is just an instrument of exchange. So it doesn't matter what you use. You can use leaves. In the olden days, they used to use firewood. In the olden days, they used to use meat. So this loyalty that we want to use our own currency, it's a blind nationalism. It's unsubstantiated nationalism that is blind to economic reality. And the economic reality in this country is that we don't have conditions for the reintroduction of our own currency. That is why the government itself, through the back door, has in fact re-dollarized. People are now being made to pay taxes in US dollars. Even vehicle licenses, the Minister of Transport gazetted Statutory Instrument 166 of 2020 obliging motorists to pay licenses in US dollars. Mnangagwa even passed a statutory instrument that obliges every shop to display 2 prices, the US dollar price and the local the Zim dollar price, which is crazy because he hasn't repealed Section 25 of the Finance Act, which says only the Zimbabwean dollar is the legal tender of Zimbabwe. So they can't re-dollarize through the back door. They have to dollarize officially by repealing the Finance Act so that we restore the regime of multiple currencies. And workers don't lose out because workers are going to gas stations. Workers are going to pick and pay. I went to Nando's yesterday and I was charged for a small piece of chicken. I was charged $9. They were not taking local money. So Mnangagwa is having his cake and eating it. He has re-dollarized the supply side, but he has remained de-dollarizing the demand side. So we as workers are still earning in the fictitious currency called the Zimbabwean dollar. Yet on the supply side, everyone is trading in US dollars. So the worker is suffering. And that's a leadership question. This man has failed. This man called Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa is failed. And that's a leadership issue. That's just on the economy. That's just on the economy. What about corruption? Comrade Blessed and Pride. There are people that are archbishops of corruption in this country. There are people that are deacons of corruption in this country.
But it is the MDC Alliance which has been accused of $2.4 million missing from your accounts.
What's 2.4 million?
In corruption.
What's 2.4?
I mean, are you trivializing corruption?
There are bishops. Let's start with the Pope. 2.7 billion US dollars was stolen in 2017. 3.5 billion US dollars was stolen in 2018. And in 2017, after the coup, on one day alone, the 27th of December 2017, $1.5 billion was stolen. For Christ's sake, who still was on Christmas Day? They've not published the audited books of accounts for 2019. And they're blaming COVID. But the real reason is that the corruption of 2019 is the grandmother of all corruption. They stole money last year and bought Zim Alloys. They stole money last year and bought a huge commercial bank in this country. They stole money last year and bought Bindura Nickel a mine. They stole money last year and bought Zupco buses from Belarus. They stole 500 million US dollars, which they put to Dubai to buy gold from the DRC.
Are you equalizing corruption?
I'm not equalizing. I'm saying there's only one corrupt party in Zimbabwe. That's ZANU-PF led by Emerson Mnangagwa.
But your councillors are the ones that have been arrested for corruptly passing out.
If someone is corrupt, let due process takes place. I want to see the person who signed off treasury bills of over $4 billion called Patrick Namasa being arrested. So don't talk of Kapenda when big girls are there. Don't talk of Kapenda when the archbishops are there. Please arrest the Pope of corruption. And you know the Pope of corruption in this country.
But doesn't it make sense to begin to deal with those issues as the MDC? You say you're an
we accept that we've set up a commission of inquiry into the matter chaired by Advocate Tabani Mpofu, and we're expecting a report very soon. But we broke no nonsense against the corruption. Those that will be found with their hands dipped in the pan, due process will take its place. But you can't at all try to equalize MDC on ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF is corruption redefined. ZANU-PF are the grandmothers and grandauthors of state capture in this country. The country is run by cartels, the likes of Secunda and Trafigura. Cartels in the agricultural sector, cartels in the retail sector, cartels in the mining sector, all controlled by ZANU-PF. Look at the monopoly of Zupco. Why have they taken over? Why is there now a monopoly of Zupco? Because they've taken it over. In Mnangagwa, Kudata Gwire, they've taken over gold mines.
But you have evidence to this effect.
It's public knowledge, my friend. You're an investigative journalist. Secunda through Landela Mines were given 5 mines by ZMDC. Secunda through Landela Mines is acquired 2 to 3 mines from Metallion Gold. Sotic International, which is a Kuda-related company, has acquired BNC. The same outfit, Landela Mines, has acquired Zim Alloys.
Is it a problem if someone has money to be able to acquire because he's got...
But he doesn't have money. This is our money. This is public money. This is money that is coming from the treasury. He doesn't have money.
Why would a government be giving an individual money to take assets?
That's the height of corruption redefined under Emerson Mnangagwa.
We are a member of the Public Accounts Committee and all these issues here in Parliament. Why are you not effectively using Parliament to ensure that you deal with these issues?
Yeah, but you know the work that the Public Accounts Committee has done. The reason why these things are now common knowledge is because of the fantastic work that Parliament is doing, not just in the Public Accounts Committee, but through the parliamentary committee system. The reason why Zimbabweans are now talking about this issue is because of the brilliant work done in Parliament.
Yeah, but you've just exposed. I mean, are you not able to go forward in Parliament to cause for a state capture, investigation into government?
Yeah, but we are doing that. You read our first report on the Minister of Finance, shocking. Read our second report on the Reserve Bank, shocking. Read the forthcoming report on Zinara, shocking. Read the forthcoming report on Command Agriculture, shocking. Read the forthcoming report on ZESA, shocking. Read the forthcoming report on NASA, shocking. Read the forthcoming report on GMP, shocking. Read the forthcoming report on Potras, shocking. So the problem is not Parliament, the problem is the citizen, including you members of the fourth estate, who are not taking advantage of this fantastic work that Parliament is doing.
Let me take
And
you.
also read the amazing work being done by the Auditor General. The reports of the Auditor General from 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 are shocking. They sound like fiction in terms of the gross abuse of resources and the culture of misgovernance in Zimbabwe. But nobody makes any noise about them. There's hardly any parastatal in this country that is not corrupt. And what saddens me, and blessed is this, that we receive in a year about $1.5 billion through our capital account. I spoke about the current account. The current account is just about imports and exports. The capital account is now all the money that comes into the country. So we receive about $1.5 billion, consisting of around $2 million in the form of foreign direct investment, consisting of around what you call aid. The bulk, the balance is diaspora remittances. So the sum totality is that when you aggregate our overseas development assistance, our diaspora remittances, and our overseas development assistance of about $1.5 billion, it's less than the amount of money that is being stolen through corruption. I said to you, in 2017, it was 2.7 billion, much more than the 1.5 billion. In 2018, it was $3.5 billion, much more than 1.5 billion. So in short, if Zimbabwe were to plug the leakages and stop the hemorrhage, we actually don't need aid. We actually don't need foreign direct investment. But because we still, like money grows on trees, I think there are people in this country who go to their rural homes and Shumba, because people steal. I've never seen anything like I've seen in the past 2 years that I've been in Parliament.
The president of this country has accused the opposition mainly for advocating for sanctions, and you've been also labeled terrorists fighting against the economic emancipation of this country. How do you so plead?
You see, those are deranged remarks. The sanction we have in Zimbabwe is the sanction, the deficit, the kwashiorkor of leadership, the kwashiorkor of honesty, decent leadership, the kwashiorkor of hardworking, clean leadership. We saw this kind of leadership briefly during the time of the GNU. But after 2017, the average Zimbabwean out there even misses old Robert Mugabe, because people are now realizing that we jumped from the frying pan into the fire under Emerson Mnangagwa. So the real sanction in this country is this regime. Take what he did yesterday. That you take Sidney Carter, one of the most corrupt persons in Zimbabwe, and you reinstate him after having been suspended for corruption. You know, what a joke. What a bloody joke. So this is the challenge in this country. It's leadership. And it starts with Emerson. Fish rots from the head.
But what can be done? Because you say there's lack of leadership. And you with an alternative leadership, where I assume there is the leadership. What is your plan? And when can we see it in action?
Look, Blessed, let's resolve the political question first.
It's not being resolved. There is.
You asked me the plan,
yes.
so I'm explaining to you. Let's resolve the political question first. Let's resolve the crisis of legitimacy. Zimbabweans are clear what they want. Zimbabweans are clear what they want. You saw them on the 31st of July. You saw them on the 16th of October. You saw them in January of 2019. You saw them on the 1st of August 2018. Zimbabweans want change. Zimbabweans want transformation. The precondition of this country moving forward is resolving the political question. And I hope that something will come out of the threatened processes started by South Africa and the ANC. But the content in respect of which ZANU-PF has held the ANC, the vicious attacks that have been made on President Ramaphosa and the African National Congress is again reflective of a political party, ZANU-PF, that is living in the 16th century. For anyone to deny that there is a crisis in Zimbabwe, when 95% of Zimbabweans are unemployed, when 79% of Zimbabweans living in extreme poverty, surviving on less than US 35 cents a day, it's madness. If you go to places like Chitungwiza, Uruyadzo, people are surviving on what they call tsaona, a plate of mealie meal, 4 leaves of vegetable, and a little cup, kachival, a little cork of cooking fat. Families are going for days without eating. Where an MP in Mavuko, in Tafara, I've seen prostitution, 9-year-olds, 15-year-olds being prostituted, not for money, for a plate of sadza. So for someone to open his ugly and washed mouth and say there's no crisis in Zimbabwe, it's a shame. And this man called Patrick Namasa is absolutely deranged. So let's resolve the political crisis and give the mandate to Advocate Nelson Chamisa, and you will see him implement what we set out to do in our smart document. Number one, economic transformation, economic turnaround based on building a US $100 billion economy in the next 5 years. Employment creation. Number two, sorting the challenge in the social services, public health delivery system. We want to introduce a national health system so that public health becomes free. We've got a plan there that is there in legislation that is there. School education is a right of every citizen. Read Section 75 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. We believe education should be free all the way to secondary school, all the way to high school, to lower sixth, to upper sixth. Then people living with disabilities, social care, people need to be given grants, $50 US, $80 US, $100 US. Anyone who is not employed, anyone in the rural area, anyone unemployed in the urban area needs a social grant from the state. Give money to the poor. Number three, put a full stop to the land question. 40 years after independence and 20 years after the land reform program, you have farms still being invaded. Only 2 days ago, Simon Grobel of Protea Farm outside Harare had his productive farm invaded to give someone's daughter a farm. It's absolutely ridiculous. So give the beneficiaries of the land reform title deed, restore the land market so that anyone who wants to buy a farm can go and buy a farm. Three, carry out an audit on the land to root out multiple farm owners, starting with Emerson Mnangagwa. Number four, legislate for maximum sizes of farms per region. In region 1, region 2, why should a farm be more than 40 hectares? Yes, gives a cattle ranger in Mapisa, in Gwanda, 200 hectares, no problem. So the land reform program needs to be put to an end so that old farmers don't continue to be called new farmers and don't continue to get state handouts 20 years after the land reform program. Number five, deal with the country's debt problem. Debt is putting a premium on this country's development. We owe about $1.5 billion US to the World Bank. We owe about $550 million to the African Development Bank. We owe about $5.5 billion US to to the Paris Club of Lenders. But because we defaulted, and we defaulted way back in 1999, no one can lend us. So we need to find a plan in which we can go for debt cancellation and debt forgiveness. And by the way, only the MDC has got the goodwill with the international community to do that, so that we can begin to access the huge amount of money, developmental money that are at the World Bank. The original name of the World Bank is the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD. So there's huge amount of money there for development. Why do we need this money? We need this money to redo our roads. Zimbabwe's got a road network of 100,000 kilometers. Less than 10% is paved. But without proper paved roads, you don't have the heartbeat of the economy. Transport is key. To redo our railway system, which belongs to 1893, when Buyane Handa and King Lobengula was still alive. Energy, we need to generate about 4,000 megawatts of energy, but we don't have the billions of dollars that are required to build energy infrastructure, including the 2,000 megawatt Batoka Gorge, including the 30 or so hydros in Manicaland, including Wange 7 and 8 and then Gwekwe Sinamatera. So infrastructure is required, but the precondition of infrastructure is resolving the debt question. Number 6 is something that I'm so intoxicated by: the development and urbanization of rural areas. Last week on Friday, we went to Magunje to bury Honorable Miriam Shai. May his soul rest in peace. The poverty, the underdevelopment in Magunje is shocking. It's just shocking. There are no decent roads. There's no electricity. So one of the urgent priorities of any decent government, ZANU was asleep for 40 years. And what is the balance sheet of ZANU-PF being asleep for 40 years? This is the balance sheet. Only 30% of Zimbabweans have access to electricity. Only 45% of our people have access to covered toilets. For the majority of our people, they still use the bush as the toilet. In some provinces, in particular in Mati North, 79% of the people in Mati North use the bush as a toilet. Less than 43% of the population have access to water that comes out from a pipe. So we are a prehistoric country. So we have to destroy the dual enclave economy. This position that a small portion, 20% of the urban areas, are supporting 80% of the rural areas. Let's electrify the rural areas. Let's put tarred roads, paved roads in the rural areas. Let's have markets there. Why should people in Mutoko drive with their tomatoes to sell in Baremsika? We should have a Haynes Mapuchka factory in Mutoko where people are selling their products, which is manufactured and converted into a finished product that will export to Angola, that will export to the DRC. So the development and urbanization of urban areas is a must. So that's our plan. Let's modernize Zimbabwe. Let's transform Zimbabwe. Let's make Zimbabwe the functional, strong state that Robert Mugabe inherited from the whites in 1980. The jewel that Mwalimu Julius Nyerere said to Robert, take care of this jewel, not for the sake of Zimbabweans, but for the sake of the entire continent, the Switzerland of Africa. And ZANU destroyed that in 40 years.
But your plan hinges on resolving the political crisis.
That's what I said.
And that crisis is not being resolved anytime soon.
You know, don't be fooled by the bravado of Emerson. Don't be fooled by 2023, long before 2023, there will be a resolution of this crisis.
You've been saying that since 2018. Now we are in 2020.
We say that in 2016 you said no, but by 2017 something had happened. So don't be fooled by the bravado. This state is shaky. There is no cockpit stability. People are angry. People inside the state, people outside the state, people are angry. And people are angry by a number of things. Number one, the lack of delivery. You see, Emerson is in that unique position of failure where he lacks democratic legitimacy. But other people can get away with the absence of democratic legitimacy by having performance legitimacy. So if you go to Rwanda, Paul Kagame has questionable democratic credentials, but no one can question his performance legitimacy. Rwanda is a functional economy. But Emerson lacks both. He lacks political legitimacy, he lacks performance legitimacy. We say Dololo. Emerson is Dololo or Zero.
But, so, are you waiting for an act of God?
No. No.
Because
There is no action without faith is meaningless. So there will be action, there will be movement. There is already movement. You are not seeing it, but there is already
your
movement.
president, Nelson Chamisa, has said that you give people a signal. They're looking for the signal. Where is it? Is it ever going to come?
Yeah, look, the MDC will provide the leadership and the plan, and I can't on this platform speak to our strategy. But I also need to be very clear and comprehensive that the agency must also come from us as Zimbabweans. We don't need a signal from anyone. If the fact that your children have gone for 2 days without the bread, the fact that you are now 40 years and you have never been employed, if that is not a signal to you, my brother, then there's something wrong. But this is not to say the MDC should not lead. The MDC will lead, and we are leading, and you will see.
How then do you encourage or re-energize the base, as you say in the MDC, when you can't convey the message of how you're planning to do this and when it's going to happen?
The MDC Alliance is an amazing movement. As I said, I was in Magunje on Friday. I was shocked by people who literally came from the bush to say, Comrade Chamisa, we've come to see you. We've come to see you. A few weeks ago, I was in Binga. I was shocked by people who literally came from the bush to say, VP, we are so pleased to see you. So, whether you are in Chendambwe, whether you are in Lupane, whether you are Emageshin Enkahilo, Gweruchile, this party is a purpose movement ingrained in the hearts and minds of the people of Zimbabwe. Something that we need to remind Emerson Mnangagwa and his surrogates, Douglas Monjoro and Togozanu, whatever.
Why do you call him? Why do you call them surrogates?
So the people want change. The people that are represented by this huge, proud movement called the MDC. But it will act, Mukoma Blessed, it will act on its terms. And when it exercises caution must not be equated with weakness. Caution is wisdom, because we are dealing with a deranged regime, one that shot in broad daylight 8 of our compatriots on the 1st of August 2018. One that shot in broad daylight 19 of our citizens in January of 2019. One that has been abducting our citizens left, right, and center, and no one is safe in Zimbabwe. It doesn't matter whether you are a journalist, they will go for you. Ask Wopo Chingono. It doesn't matter whether you are the church, ask the Catholic bishop. It doesn't matter whether you are a lawyer and you are putting on your gown and saying, my Lord, your worship. Ask Job Scala, ask Advocate Tabani, ask Advocate Ashidi, ask Beatrice Mtetwa. No one is safe. No one is safe. So, we will not play into the script of a bloodthirsty, deranged regime. The current leaders of this government are the same authors, the same drivers, the same principal drivers of Kukura Hundi. Emerson Mnangagwa was the Minister of State Security. Read his reports to understand his capability. On Kukura Hundi, read his reports in Parliament, in the answered reports when he was making briefings to parliamentarians about the situation in the south of the country. Chwenga was in charge of a brigade in Matebele. You know that. Parents, may his soul rest in peace, was in charge of the 5th Brigade. So when you have these butchers now effectively running the state, the MDC must exercise restraint because we don't want another bloodbath in this country. But that must not be taken for weakness. Wisdom and protection of our lives, the lives of citizens, because we believe that no blood of a Zimbabwe justifies loss for power.
But in your response, you called your also colleagues, ZANU-PF surrogates, Douglas Monzo and Thokozani Kupe. Why do you say they're surrogates? Are they not just legitimate opposition leaders who also want to change things for Zimbabwe?
In 2018, there was an election. 2.6 million people voted for Advocate Nelson Chamisa. Of the 32 urban councils, the MDC Alliance won 28 out of 32. We won over 500 councillors across the length and breadth of Zimbabwe. We won over 123 members of parliament. Now you can't be opposition if you now start taking all those things, start implementing and executing a scorched earth approach to destroy the people's movement, and you call yourself opposition. You're not. You're a pathetic, little, miserable, cantankerous.
But you're a lawyer, Advocate BG, and you respect the rule of law. Isn't that what they're doing just in line with the Supreme Court judgment?
No, it's not. The Supreme Court doesn't say they do that. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. The Supreme Court simply said, go and resolve the issue of succession. That's all it did. And I'm giving you Thokozani Kupe until June of 2020. And if you fail Muge Komichi, I'm giving you until the 30th of July 2020. That's what the Supreme Court said. He didn't say you've got the right to fire this one or right to fire that one. After all, that's actually against the Supreme Court judgment. Because the Supreme Court is saying you're all one. Whether you went to Gweru or you went to Bulawayo to Thokozani, you're all one. So it doesn't give the right of everyone doing what they're doing. These people are crazy, imbeciles, morons.
How do we find each other and locate each other, Honorable BT, if you can't talk to people that you used to sit across the table and respect each other?
We will speak to their principal, Emerson Mnangagwa. We are ready to have dialogue with Emerson Mnangagwa any day, any time. Of course, there has to be the right conditions. What are those right conditions? Let's have signals of sincerity. There can't be dialogue between the MDC Alliance and ZANU-PF when you are butchering our people as you are doing. When you are abusing our people. Only yesterday, Emerson tried to get poor little Joanna Mamumbe from hospital because she couldn't attend the court and the warrant was unjustifiably issued. As I'm talking to you right now, every leader, including myself, we're going to the remand court. I actually have a conviction for what Job Scala has been rotting in Chikurubi for the last 3 weeks. Godfrey Kurawoni was rotting in Mashingo prison. So there has to be signals of sincerity. Number 2, there has to be a mutually agreed facilitator. We're able in South Africa. Number 3, there has to be regional scaffolding of the process by the SADC and the African Union. That's our position.
But how do you go to the next door and have a conversation with someone when you can't talk to your wife at home? I mean, you guys are brothers. You shared the trenches. You all stood up at one point and asked the nation to support you to remove ZANU-PF with Thokozani Kupe and Douglas Monzo. Why, if you can't find each other at that level, how do you find each other with ZANU-PF that you accuse of all these gross human rights violations?
We will discuss with the decent compatriots who are imbued with a value system. We will not discuss with individuals that have lost the inner core of humanity, what we call Ubuntu. So we'll discuss with their principal, Emmerson Mnangagwa. I've answered that question, please.
Let me take you to the human rights issues, the arrests that are happening. How do these affect the movement, or democratic values that you feel should be espoused?
Well, the nation is under attack. The nation is under attack. The country is under attack by a deranged leadership. One is reminded of China under the Cultural Revolution and the Game of War. One is reminded of Pol Pot, extreme periods of disequilibrium in the world's history. Idi Amin in Uganda, Embara Bokassa in the Central Africa Republic, the last dark days of Siad Barre, Mengistu Ali Miriami, and so forth. That is what we are facing in Zimbabwe. If you look at little girls like Cecilia Chembiri, Netsai Marova, Joanna Mamumbe, they have gone through an ordeal, but the state is unrelenting. It has even gone to the extent, in a matter that is lis pendens, in a matter that is pending before the courts, to manufacture dubious videos to try and embarrass these kids that have been brutalized and sexually abused. Apartheid was a horrible system, but apartheid, even in its ugliest form, never used rape as a political weapon. You know that in 2019, women were raped. You know that these girls that we are talking about have been sexually, abused. So, as I said before, Emmerson has taken our country to a low, unfathomable pit, a low level, a dark era. But these things don't last. These things don't last. No dictatorship is permanent. Change is the only constant in our lives. Apartheid regime was vicious, but it collapsed. The Mugabe regime was vicious, but it collapsed. If the people of Zimbabwe can remove the baobab that Robert Mugabe was, they can remove the thorn tree that Emmerson Mnangagwa is.
But aren't you scared for your lives? Aren't you going to retreat because of all this?
We have never been cowards. We've always looked the beast in the eye and not blinked. You came here to my office, you didn't see a single bodyguard. We're not afraid of them. They can take our lives because they think they're gods, but it doesn't matter. There will be change and transformation in Zimbabwe in our lifetimes, Namhla Katesi, before they can say Amen. It's going to happen.
And you are prepared for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are prepared to pay the ultimate price with our lives, and we strongly believe that there is no struggle without its own Krisani, and we are the Krisanis of the struggle.
Some of your comrades have fallen by the wayside, especially because of corruption. The poverty, rather not corruption, poverty. Do you think that the lack of financial resources within your political party could affect the attainment of
Of course. Not every one of my comrades is as lucky as I am. I work here with a law firm. So, personal political economy is important. And remember, we are competing with this amoeba that is full of resources. They've got resources which they're getting from foreign currency that they control at the Reserve Bank. They've got resources that they're getting from command agriculture. They've got resources that are getting from all kinds of subsidies that they are providing to their people. They've got resources that they're getting from commodities. The selling of our country to Russians, to Chinese, mineral concessions. They've even given Chinese concessions in national parks. They've got resources from the huge tenders that they're giving to themselves and to their children. So then they are stealing directly from treasure. So we can't compete with them. But what we do have, which we don't have, are the masses. The people out there who know that Nelson Chamisa is our leader, and that Nelson Chamisa will one day cross us in a crossover into the New Zimbabwe, the New Zimbabwe that we crave for, the New Zimbabwe that we see with the eyes of our hearts, we're going to get there.
Do you have faith in the electoral systems that they will work and could deliver democracy in Zimbabwe?
I don't have faith in our electoral system. I think it's severely captured, as are so many other institutions. Some of them, don't ask me which ones, because I can't say. But we have to have reforms. That's why part of this dialogue must not be centered on power sharing. We don't want another GNU. It must be centered on structural reforms so that we create a sustainable Zimbabwe. We are tired, Mkoma Blessed. When you go out of the country, they ask you, where do you come from, Zimbabwe? Everyone goes, there's fatigue there. So we need change. We need to give the younger generations a chance. We need to give Zimbabwe a chance. When I grew up, I knew that if I worked hard, I would buy a house in Glenora or Highfield. After a few years, I would buy a house in Meborane. After a few years, I would buy a house in Highlands or Borod, which is in fact what I did. But the young generation are lucky to buy a Honda Fit. Forget about a house in Budiriro. Forget about a house in Kwadza. Forget about a house in Meborane. Forget about a house in Mapopoma or Makoko. So we have to give young people a chance. It pains me, and Mkoma Blessed, that there are 4 generations, 4 decades of kids that have never seen the inside of a workplace. All they know is to sell airtime. All they know is to be a cross-border and go to Mozambique, to Tete province, or to Beira, or to South Africa, and so forth. It pains me when I go to South Africa and 3/4 of the waiters that are serving me are Zimbabweans, and they're disturbing my meal because they want selfies. It pains me. Those kids need to come home so that they can build their lives in their own beloved country, Zimbabwe.
I'll give you this opportunity, Abiti, to address the nation, to talk to them from your heart, and deal with the issues that you feel should be dealt with.
I think Zimbabweans must keep the faith. This is a beautiful country that we have. It's worth dying for. Let's be the agency of the change that we deserve. Let's build an inclusive society. Let's build a new tomorrow. Let's embark on a transformative, disruptive agenda for the sake of future generations. We don't deserve the current status quo. I can't move around in a supermarket, in a restaurant without people saying, Vabiti, Zokereba Mamuri, bye-bye. Vabiti, Matiregerera, you have let us down. We haven't let the people of Zimbabwe down. Let's work for the Zimbabwe we deserve. We don't deserve Emerson Mnangagwa. We don't deserve ZANU-PF. We deserve a new, bright Zimbabwe where everyone lives as an equal to the next one, with love, with hard work, with commitment. The values which we put in chapter 1 of our constitution, the values which we put in the preamble to our constitution, the values which we put in section 8 of the constitution of Zimbabwe. And we said we want to build a just, equitable, a prosperous Zimbabwe where everyone lives in happiness. We are very sad. We want to be happy.
We stand where we stood. Kune vanotiti hanzi ava vakatengwa nezanu, hanzi makupe vakatengwa nezanu, vakomichi vakatengwa nezanu, vamonzora vakatengwa nezanu. Regai titi vakatengwa nezanu muriko wani, komichi, kupe, monzora havana kubvira vambotakura mukaka weGushungo Dairy.